Thanks for that, Claire, and yes, there is a lot to cover. A lot of the presentations this morning, very good presentations, of lots of graphs, lots of data. I'm pleased to say mine will be a little bit lighter in terms of graphs and data, but nonetheless there are some important messages that I'd like to get over to you. And I think the first question is, for many people, is why grow pulses? And I've put a list together up there. I think pulses are considered to be a classic break crop. They can now satisfy some of the requirements of the basic payment scheme. They can offer a disease break, particularly in cereals. They can offer different opportunities, perhaps, for blackgrass control. They can have lower inputs, but you still need to put inputs into the crop, and they do need looking after. They are leguminous crops, and they can fix atmospheric nitrogen, and they can leave that nitrogen residue available for the following wheat crop. The last point there, lower nitrous oxide emissions, I've question marked that because we're waiting on the final report funded by AHDB, done by ADAS on several crop species to determine the N2O emissions, which is why I've question marked it, and that's all I'll say on that particular topic for the day. I think pulses will be in strong demand for 2015. The trade tell us, basically, you grow them, we can sell them. Pulses generally performed well in 2014, particularly winter beans giving high yields. Spring beans also yielded well. Peas were perhaps a little more variable. Bit of crystal ball gazing time now, but the consensus from the trade is that we can see perhaps a 30% increase in spring bean area up to around about 100,000 hectares. Winter beans, perhaps a smaller increase, up to about 35,000 hectares. Peas remaining fairly stable at around about the 30,000 hectare mark. Seed availability may limit the potential for growing. I think particularly in peas, if you haven't got peas bought already for seed, then I think you're unlikely to get any more. But beans, talking to people, it always seems that any beans will be able to found to cover the requirements there. Of course, the inevitable questions get asked. If more beans are being grown, what's going to happen to the price? Well, I think the first thing to note is that even with those area increases that I've just talked about, that will only put us back to the total pulse area that we've seen back in 2009 and 10. So we've seen decreases in the area since then. That will put us back there. Looking forward to November 2015, however, the consensus again from the trade is that, and we've heard from Jack already, that beans will probably trade in the area of 30 to 35 pounds a tonne premium over wheat. Plus there'll be an additional 15 to 30 pounds premium on top of that for the human consumption element. The British Edible Pulse Association deals with the buying and selling of premium pulses, and talking about spring beans, the major market for spring beans is into North African markets for sale into human consumption, and 90% of that is into Egypt. Population increases within the North African countries will generate increases in usage of beans. It says on that graph, I know it's in small print there, but it does say that around about 400,000 tonnes of beans were produced. Back in 2009-10, that was 610,000, and all the beans were sold then, and the beans are wanted. Other uses for spring beans are then into aquaculture uses, which is increasing both in the UK and in the Scandinavian countries. But there is also the feed element as well, but the price needs to fall for the feed market to take the beans. As far as the peas are concerned, the major market is the Marifat market into canning, primarily for home use and the packet trade, but there are export opportunities, particularly into the Japanese snack trade market, which is where the big premiums are for the peas. Basic payment scheme, it's already been mentioned that it's quite a diverse scheme. I don't pretend to know everything about it, but really as far as peas and beans are concerned, there are two elements. There's the EFA, the ecological focus areas, and crop diversification. The BPS is complex and there are still several unknowns. But within the EFA, they do include nitrogen-fixing crops, i.e. pulses, peas and beans. And within the crop diversification, there's the requirement to grow at least 2 or 3 crops depending on area. Pulses can satisfy both of those in one go. So land down to pulses is both eligible as an EFA, subject to area, and at the same time be counted as a third crop for crop diversification. Not all legume crops are equal in terms of nitrogen fixation, and this is just to demonstrate. We have lupins on the left-hand side there, fixing more nitrogen per year per hectare, down through beans, peas, and green beans on the lower end of the scale. Beans are up there with lupins, but don't forget with crops such as lupins, you do need to add an inoculant to get them to nodulate and produce nitrogen, whereas with peas and beans you don't, they naturally nodulate within the soil. Looking at nitrogen residues, peas and beans can leave a residue of nitrogen that can be used by the following cereal crop. It's generally been accepted, around about 30 to 50 kilos per hectare is available for use, with beans probably being on the higher end of the scale of that. But levels are variable, and within the trials that we've recently done, levels have even been more variable than that, 20 to 60 kilos a hectare. And we think this is down to seasonal weather, particularly rainfall. We do live in a maritime climate, and the weather does vary considerably from season to season. So in 2011 and 12, we looked at 19 paired sites. Now, these are sites with wheat following either oilseed rape or wheat following, in this case, winter beans. But it has been peas and spring beans as well. The top graph there you can see is following oilseed rape, wheat that has no fertiliser added following oilseed rape, and the one below, the much lusher crop, is the one following winter beans. Looking at the graph, this is if we take the oilseed rape, wheat following oilseed rape as the baseline, we've then calculated as a percentage the increase in soil nitrogen supply following either peas or spring or winter beans. Again, comparing that to oilseed rape as the baseline. And we've seen that peas and beans do give a positive increase. I said earlier that beans were on the upper end of the scale. Actually, combining peas in those years were coming out slightly ahead of the beans. So, from the results for the 2011 and 12 supported the theory that pulses can provide more nitrogen to the following cereal crop than the oilseed rape. And don't forget, the oilseed rape crop would have received nitrogen. So in unfertilised cereal crops, estimates of SMN and SNS were higher after the pulses than in paired crops after the oilseed rape. Of course, we have to look at nitrogen takeoff as well in the cereal crop, and again, this was perhaps even more variable than the SNS and SMN results. We do have more data to add to this. We've got data now from 2013 and 2014, and indeed the trials have been put in the ground now for 2015. So it's a bit of watch this space. About this time next year, we'll be producing a lot more data on nitrogen residues following pulses. Blackgrass control. In winter beans, well, winter beans are often sown later than oilseed rape. The delaying of drillings can allow a flush of blackgrass to come, which can be sprayed off. You can also use pyrazimide and carbetamide where there is no resistance. You can also use other partner these with other products for broadleaf weed activity. Trilate is approved in pulses, and there are also other post-emergence options for use in the spring. But in the spring sown crop, many growers who switch to spring cropping are doing so for one reason, and that's to improve the control of blackgrass. You can get cultural control techniques combined with chemical control as well, so rotational ploughing, light or shallow cultivations, stale seed beds. Cover cropping, I've question marked this, but I think this is going to become an area of strong research in the coming years, because I think cover cropping perhaps not can also help with blackgrass control, improving improving soil structure, improving organic matter, and perhaps helping with soil-borne diseases as well. Moving now, I'll call this a little bit attention to agronomic detail. I think it's more aimed at perhaps looking at one or two pests and diseases that can have the quality implications for growing peas and beans. We've already heard that to get the top premiums for peas and beans, you do need to maintain the quality. I've already said that peas and beans are relatively low input, but that's no reason to skimp on inputs, particularly where they're required and where they can be justified. And quality is the key to getting the top premiums. So it's a case of paying attention to detail. Make use of the monitoring systems that are available for the diseases or pests, and use those for the correct timing for best control as well. First one, it's a pest of pea and bean weevil. It's perhaps not associated with the quality aspect, but it certainly can affect yield. Weevils, they hibernate in hedgerows, and we can put traps out in the previous crops of pulses and trap the weevils. They then start to migrate into the crop, and it's within the first 2 weeks of the migration into the crop that's the important timing. They lay eggs, the eggs get washed down into the soil, and the larvae hatch, and they feed on the root nodules. So emerged crops or emerging crops after the threshold catch has been caught are the most at risk, and when you start to see the first little notches on the leaves, just around here, the U-shaped notches on the leaf edges, that's the time for the first spray application, and again, follow it up 10 days later. It is becoming quite difficult to control weevil, but hopefully with these monitoring that we have now can help in this. So by monitoring the weevil, we can identify seasons where weevil numbers are low, and perhaps we don't therefore need to apply a treatment. It can identify times of peak activity, so we can treat at the optimal timing. It may reduce the need for prophylactic spraying, and it might allow us to select the time of drilling so we can avoid peak activity periods, and that might become useful in organic situations. And of course, we can use it as an integrated pest management system for assured cropping. Aphids. Well, most crops get aphids, but for peas and beans, they are carriers of viruses, and they can spread viruses within the crops. The picture on the right-hand side is black bean aphid. It tends to affect individual plants and small areas, whereas the pea aphid, it also affects peas and it also affects beans as well, but it's much more mobile within the crop, and this is the one that will spread the viruses around and within. So we need to treat when we've got approximately 20% of the plants that are infected. But of course, when we start to look at a disease, and particularly or viruses, and in terms of aphid transmission, once you start to look at the thing, it vanishes, it goes away. So in 2012 and 13, we had low levels of infestation, and we had low levels of virus because of that. 2013, we did get aphid, yeah, but it was a late infection coming more into June than typically in April that we get. But in terms of monitoring for aphid, use the Rothamsted website, the insect survey, and the bulletins that are on there for information on the movement of aphids. Pea moth, this is specific to peas, as the name suggests, and timing for control is crucial. You need to put moth traps out, 3rd week of May. Don't rely on your mate down the road putting out traps and relying on him, because he's probably relying on you putting out your traps and vice versa. Get your own traps and put them out. I think suffice to say on the trapping is that once you've reached the threshold of 10 or more moths on 2 occasions, you then need to start recording maximum min temperatures, and you use the supply calculator to give you an estimated spray date. A far simpler way, however, is once you've reached the threshold, is to go to the PGRO website and we'll give you the information from there, because getting the spray date timing is crucial for effective control. Bruchid. It's become really quite a problem in beans, particularly those for human consumption. The picture there with the beetles on them and the holes in the beans. It's not the hole that's the problem, it's the beetles themselves, because the Egyptians won't take them. And you do need to keep bruchid levels at a very low instance to get them away for the human consumption market. The beetles move into the crop and they feed on the pollen within the crop for approximately 2 weeks. But when the temperature reaches 20 degrees centigrade for 2 consecutive days, that starts to trigger egg laying, and that's the time at which you need to spray. Or you spray crops at the first pod stage, and that's when about 50% of the pods are 2 centimetres long. Angle nozzles can help with penetration down into the bottom of the crop, but high volumes don't seem to help, so stick with the usual volumes, 150 or 200 litres per hectare. A couple of chemicals that are available for that, hallmarks with Xeon technology and Dasis. There's also now a monitoring system hosted by Syngenta, who were partners in the work that was done. Quite a long website name to remember there to get to the monitoring pages. I think the simplest way is to type bruchid cast into a search engine and you'll find it. Registration is free and with an email address. Not only will it tell you when you get your threshold and the 20 degrees centigrade, but it also gives you spray days available in terms of wind and rainfall, etc. Downy mildew. Well, this is a soil-borne disease. It's favoured by cool, humid conditions, and in peas you have a seed treatment for control. That's a product called Wakil XL. There is no foliar control in peas, but in beans you do have a foliar spray called Metalaxyl-M or SL567A available under an EMU. But of course consult the recommended lists as well, where we give information on varietal tolerances in spring beans and peas on tolerance to downy mildew themselves. In spring beans, Crop Monitor hosts a forecasting system as well. Crop Monitor hosts several other diseases and indeed crops as well, but spring beans is part of those. Chocolate spot. This is a cool wet weather disease. It's more of a problem in winter beans than spring. The disease develops very quickly, but there's a wide choice of protectant available. And in terms of timing of the products, we have this particular graph shows the untreated. The yellow shows the 3 timings individually. The blue bars show double timings and the full multi-treatment on the end of the 3 timings. The crucial thing here is that mid-timing, which is when the pods are set and you've got full flowers there. So both in terms of disease control and getting maximum yield, that middle timing is the crucial one to aim for. Rust, however, is quite a different story. This requires warm, humid conditions. It's a later season disease, which again develops very quickly. And again, there's a wide choice of protectant chemicals available and can be often timed with a second chocolate spot spray as well. Again, we have the 3 timings there, the double timings and the full multi-treatment there as well. Again, however, the crucial thing here is a later season disease, so the timing is at the later stage when the pods have set and maintaining the green area leaf cover. Botrytis is specific to peas. It happens when the petals start to fall off the ends of the pods, and in warm, humid conditions, wet conditions, the petals can stick on the pods and they get botrytis. It can lead to chalky peas in the produce and staining of the produce as well. Again, lowering the price for human consumption. We have a numerous range of protectant fungicides to apply at full flower stage. Benefits of peas and beans to the whole rotation. Well, I thought of this for quite some time, and actually I came back where I started, is why grow pulses in the rotation. They are a classic break crop. They can satisfy the requirements of the basic payment scheme. They can provide a disease break within cereals and offer different opportunities for blackgrass control. They can have lower inputs. They fix atmospheric nitrogen and can leave that nitrogen available for the following cereal crop. And they can allow a good entry for the following wheat crop. But peas and beans can be profitable in their own right, and pulses are in strong demand. I mentioned profitability. This graph was done for us by Graham Redmond of Anderson's, and it will indeed appear in the PGRO latest edition of the Pulse magazine, which will be going out shortly, and really just gives the gross margin figures for a range of crops there. He's used the Farm Management Pocketbook of 2015 to come up with these. And from our point of view, the good thing is that the peas and beans are on the correct side of the graph, giving good gross margins. That's really all I have to say, other than, you know, it was a very quick whistle-stop tour through peas and beans there. If you need any further help, then there's our website, pgro.org. The phone number's there, email us, come and talk to us. The picture up there is the Pulse Agronomy Guide. That's for 2014. The 2015 version is it's in preparation now, and it will be available towards the end of the year into early next year. And the last bit at the bottom of that, we are participating in helping HGCA in selected monitor farms across the UK as well. I think that's all I have to say, Claire. So
great. Thank you very much indeed, Stephen. Thank you.